Welcome back. All right, so I'm keeping the same jersey on that I just wore in a hockey video, but I wanted to do that because Lunar New Year's tomorrow. So since I wasn't able to get a sweatshirt at Disneyland, there was a Lunar New Year sweatshirt because all the adult ones had already sold out by the time we got there, and it bothers me because I wanted one so badly. This year of the dragon, man. That's why they sold out really fast. Last year when we were there were jerseys everywhere because it was the year of the rabbit. I didn't get one of those either, but I did get year of the rabbit stuff. Either way, that's all beside the point. I want to talk about two things today. First off, yesterday the press conference was weird from WWE because all of a sudden Cody comes out like, "Yeah, I want Roman and I don't care about The Rock," and it's like, wait, but on Friday you said you took counsel and you hugged The Rock and The Rock whispered something in your ear, and now it's gone the other way. Now I'm not saying they're wrong; they're absolutely right. Cody Rhodes should not be out of that spot. The problem with that whole press conference and the way they did that was Seth Rollins is an afterthought. Now, I've talked about this before. Seth Rollins, when he won that title, had to beat Roman Reigns. The fact they've protected Roman Reigns this long means that when Roman Reigns says, "That's the loser title, that's not as good as my title because nobody ever beat me, so that title is made up of guys that I've already beaten," he's 100% right. That is 100% true. And since Roman Reigns hasn't been pinned and didn't lose that belt that Seth Rollins has, it does make it look secondary. And then the way that whole press conference went, who's the main guy? Roman Reigns. So Seth is still the secondary champion. He is the John Bradshaw Layfield of this generation, which is too bad because Seth Rollins is one of the best wrestlers on the planet. And it has to be frustrating to be the top guy on one show while everybody secretly says, or just straight out to your face says, the other guy's a bigger star than you are. His championship means more than yours does. So what they've done here essentially is they've taken it from potentially Cody versus Seth again, and that could have been interesting. They've turned it into Cody going after Roman, but in the process of doing this, it's made it look like this title isn't as important as yours. I'm going to go after the even though I made that agreement with The Rock, it's all forgotten. Now Seth was involved in a little brawl esque thing at the end, but yeah, it's definitely made it look like Seth's the secondary champ. The only way to fix that is he has to get a visible, clean pinfall victory over Roman Reigns. You could do that without the title on the line. You could do it in a tag title match, I guess, although a tag match doesn't have the same gravitas as if he beats him one on one, but you have to get a visible pinfall victory for Seth, unless the plan is Seth's going to go get surgery and you're going to give the title to, say, Damian Priest. I guess he's still got that Money in the Bank briefcase. There's talk about whether or not he might be a transitional champion to the next guy, but it is an issue in WWE that one title definitely seems to be more important than the other, which is not really new, but it's too bad. It's too bad that with the way Triple H has been able to book so much so well, that it does feel like Seth's title reign has not been what it should be. But I'm also not necessarily liking Shinsuke Nakamura's position as the guy who loses important matches all the time. Feels like I'm watching Jake Roberts in the 80s, where Jake the Snake was the guy you go through on your way to Hulk Hogan. And yeah, that still seems to be the case, where you have a guy who's basically he's there, he's going to be in main event matches, but he's never going to win anything of importance. And it does mean that when Shinsuke's in a match, I automatically assume he's losing it. Now, while that's big news, and I hope that we cobble together something out of that top of the picture that makes the WrestleMania 40 card as good as they want it to be, because they want it to be this huge, massive event, right? That's part of the reason The Rock's involved, also because of his position on the board and everything. So people who've been mad at AEW because you have these EVPs that are wrestlers and they're running things, well, now WWE's getting into that as well, so I'm sure people will be equally as critical of, no, we're still doing the tribalism. Cool, cool. Now, the tribalism being as it is, there have always been those who will defend Vince McMahon. That, well, he's rich and he can just do stuff other people can't. Which maybe is true, but his ethics have always been questionable. The thing is, I've always gone further than ethics. I've always viewed Vince as being kind of just not a good guy. And that's been an opinion I've had of him since the 80s, when he was buying up all the independents. He was buying up all the regional wrestling. People of following generations don't know how much fun it was with the regionals. That you could watch AWA, you could watch NWA, you could watch Florida Wrestling, you could watch WWF. You didn't have to just watch one show, and then eventually it became just one show. Of course, Ted Turner changed that when he bought WCW and made it a big deal, but that flamed out. I think WWF, when they do the shows on the Monday Night Wars, I think they overly simplify things. I think they make it look like WCW was worse than what they were. Like, I was a WWF fan ahead of WCW. I was not a big fan of WCW. But there was some really good wrestling that went on there. And there were nights where I felt like the wrestling was better in WCW than it was in WWF. The plot lines were more entertaining in WWF. They were more creative, but they were more creative because they had to be. They had been stomped down by WCW in the ratings. There was some real concern they might end up going out of business. And then, the storyline turns and WCW ends up going out of business. And Vince, since then, one thing with Vince that always drove me nuts was that a wrestler could become a big star on the independents or a big star in another company. They'd sign in WWF, and you just knew that wrestler was going to lose and lose and lose and lose. That has changed in recent years, but it feels like that's changed in recent years because the whole business has changed more than Vince directly deciding who should or shouldn't be pushed. And I don't know how much attention Vince pays now to who came from where. I don't know how much attention he'd been paying to that. But the revelations with Vince that have come out over the last couple of weeks, I feel like I can talk about this a little bit as I've been a fan since the 80s. And we knew Vince McMahon was not a good person. We knew Vince McMahon was not a nice guy. We also knew there was a lot of issues with behavior in WWF locker rooms. WWF, now WWE, does a much better job of hiding what goes on in the locker room than AEW. AEW, the doors might as well be wide open and we can hear the fighting. WWE, I think, does a better job of insulating wrestlers from each other who don't get along. I think they do a better job of preventing fights, but it doesn't mean there aren't some of those same things. When I went to the wrestling event there, around a month ago now, when Drew McIntyre spoke on the mic, yes, he was in character, but it felt like there was real passion behind it when he said he doesn't get along with everybody in the locker room, and maybe his time is coming to an end in WWF/WWE. But it did. It felt like there was something behind it. But again, because the company hides that stuff so well and they play stuff off in storylines so much, I don't know. Like, could he be talking about CM Punk? Sure. Does he necessarily have to be talking about CM Punk? No. Because the company does a much better job of hiding all of it. AEW, there's guys who have direct lines to all the gossip rags and all the online forums, and so everything's just kind of out there. So the difference to me between Tony Khan and Vince McMahon has been that Vince McMahon, we can see, like, and the reports of all these disgusting, heinous things he's been doing. I'm not getting into the reports of them because, no, they're gross. But the reality is that, okay, let's just say none of that happened. The fact that it seems kind of plausible because it's Vince, right? Whereas if that kind of stuff came out about Tony Khan, I'd be like, nah, Tony Khan's come across as a dork. He's come across as a guy who doesn't speak that well on TV. He's come across as a guy who might be a bit naive about actually dealing with pro wrestlers and the egos and all of the other crap that goes on backstage. He definitely seems to be a step behind because he's never been a wrestler. He's just a fan. But have I ever thought that Tony's evil? No. So that's part of the reason why I really want AEW to succeed. And also, I think it's important the wrestlers have more than one company to go to, that they have multiple companies to go to. And I know TNA has gone back to the TNA name, and they're trying to, bring their name back up to prominence and get things back together, and I hope they do. You have New Japan as well. You have various Mexican promotions and Japanese promotions. But WWE's really been the big one, and it's important to have another one that wrestlers can go to. So I'm not getting pushed in WWE. I don't feel like I'm being treated properly. I want to go over to AEW, and vice versa. I'm not getting pushed properly in AEW. I want to go to WWE. That's how it should work. And so I think as wrestling fans, we should be rooting for both of them to succeed. And with Vince McMahon out, and it feels like he's finally out with WWE, now I can root for WWE on a corporate level as well, where maybe I wasn't with Vince McMahon. There's very creative editing to programs on WWE when they talk about other corporations and other companies. It feels like they'll get into the seedy underbelly of stuff that was going on in other companies when they talk about them. Not so much with WWE. They really gloss everything over. They get it like some of the ruthless aggression episodes. I had to stop watching that on WWE because I'm like, wow, are they ever changing history? This is so not how the fans reacted. I remember those shows. They're showing like these huge cheering sections. That's not nah. Yeah, it wasn't as unanimous as people are making it sound. But I mean, they edited it. It's their programming. It's their channel. They can do whatever they want with it. But as a wrestling fan, I've always known deep down that Vince wanted to be the ruler of this empire, this corporate empire, that he had this vision for what he could turn it into, and B, he didn't seem to care that much about other people. Jim Ross is the one that to me stands out. Jim Ross, blood, sweat, and tears for that company for ages, and Vince mocked him openly on TV. And it didn't seem like this was being done for storyline purposes. It was just done for just the sake of being mean. And it's not the only thing. Like, there was the Kiss My Ass Club, which didn't. I was never entertained by that. I was disturbed by that. I was like, why? What does any of this accomplish? Like, I did not understand any of the storylines back then. The way he humiliated Trish, it was gross. It was just, and again, he would come up with these plot lines. He reportedly had a plot line where Stephanie was going to be pregnant and her brother would be the dad of the baby, or that'd be the storyline that maybe he's the dad of the baby, and they had to talk him out of that one. Like, it's stuff that Vince would think of that most of us would never think of. Where we'd be like, that's like that's a storyline that if I told you, hey, ECW is going to do this storyline, and go, yeah, ECW, they were freaks over there. And it would seemingly be like, oh, yeah, of course. But the fact that WWF/WWE had this same kind of, so I'm not surprised by any of the accusations against Vince. I've never been a fan of his. It has at times made it difficult to watch a product knowing that my watching that product, my promoting that product directly would benefit him on some level. Back when pay-per-views were 30-40 bucks, I might not want to give him 40 bucks. I might not want to support him while I enjoy the wrestlers and I enjoy the product. Knowing who's at the top and who's getting a lot of that money might have put me off. I don't expect anything to happen to Vince from here. I think the waters are going to get muddied very quickly. I've already seen the waters being muddied online with the comments back and forth. But I think Vince is finally gone from wrestling for good, and I think that's great. And I think one thing that's important to acknowledge is that with all this stuff that Vince has been doing for so many years, I've never heard anything about Shane or Stephanie. I've never heard anything about either of them being unkind towards wrestlers or having any of that kind of behavior. I think Stephanie put up with a lot in the late 90s, early 2000s. Stephanie, and I'm going to say this too, Stephanie put up with a lot of online hate for, with the whole McMahon everything storylines. I think she did well. I think she played a heel very well. I think she was better in the ring than people give her credit for, considering she's not really an athlete. She's not really a wrestler. So I think the fact she went in there with Trish and had a match, good on her. I believe she had a match with Lita as well at one point. Like, good on her. And being willing to go in there when you don't really need to. She was the $1 billion princess. She didn't need to wrestle. Neither she nor Shane needed to wrestle. It's why I had nothing but respect for them being willing to go out and do that. And I mean, if you're in line to inherit $1 billion company, you really want to go out there and get beat up? Probably not. But both of those kids did, and from every account, they're good parents. I know Stephanie's been married to Triple H for 20 years now. I don't think Shane's gone through any kind of a divorce either. Like, they seem very stable, very normal, and I have nothing but affection for the two of them, especially Steph. And I think if WWE is really gonna take this company in the right direction, Stephanie has to be involved. She has to be one of the people that is at the corporate head to make that work. I think that the fact that she was willing to scream and yell, I think the fact she was really good looking helped get her on TV and get the crowd to hate her. But who Stephanie is as a person is the reason why she moved up in the company. Because the McMahon name helps, but if you're not good, if you don't know what you're doing, it's going to get exposed and you're not going to last in that position. So, again, nothing but respect for Steph, because I would imagine all these horrible storylines coming out about Vince, all these horrible stories makes me wonder, like, so did Vince just have this monster side towards certain people? Or would people in his orbit, close friends and family, would they have known that side, that dark side of Vince? And how much did they know? We may never know the true answer to that, but I'm glad it's done. I wanted to do a video on this and post it to the channel for all you fine people on the internet. I hope WWE straightens out their WrestleMania 40 as quickly as possible. Stop treating Seth Rollins like he's a secondary wrestler when he's got one of your main titles. Knock it off. I don't know what you got to do, but you got to do something so that both titles feel equally important. And they're not doing that right now. But we don't have Vince to blame for that, do we? So Hunter will figure it out. I think the press conference yesterday was part of a pivot. And yes, I do think WWE has been trying to get people to talk about anything that's not the Vince McMahon story. I think that's part of the reason why The Rock's there. I think that's part of the reason why there's all this controversy. I think this is so people will stop talking about the Vince thing. I can talk about both. So there you go. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe in the event that you have not already. But thank you guys so much for all your support. It means a lot. I will talk to you again soon.